everyone, hope you're having a great night. I wanted to hop on and tell you this. Just because they run with the quote unquote right crowd doesn't mean that they are the right crowd. You've got to watch for the fruit of their actions. Amen. What I wanted to do is I want to look at the story in John chapter 12 today, and I want to look at the actions of Judas before he actually betrayed Jesus on the cross, because this is very, very telling at his heart stance, even before his ultimate actions came forth, with the betrayal of Jesus in the long run, okay? And so what I want to do is I want to read from John chapter 12, starting in verse 3, okay? It says, Mary picked up an alabaster jar filled with nearly a liter of extremely rare and costly perfume, the purest extract of nard, and she anointed Jesus's feet. Then she wiped them dry with her long hair, and the fragrance of the costly oil filled the house. But Judas the locksmith, Simon's son, the betrayer, spoke up and said, "What a waste! We could have sold this perfume for a fortune and given the money to the poor." Verse 6. In fact, Judas had no heart for the poor. He only said this because he was a thief and in charge of the money case. He would steal money wherever he wanted from the funds given to support Jesus's ministry. Wow. Okay. And so, isn't it interesting that Judas is trying to conceal his actions under the guise of, it's not going to be used for God's kingdom. But in reality, his heart motive was, I'm stealing these funds. And so if she pours this costly stuff out on Jesus's feet, I'm not going to get my pick of the bucket like I've been used to. Amen. And isn't it interesting that Jesus knew that this was going on all along, and yet Judas was still allowed to hang out with this group of disciples and was still hanging around, quote unquote, the right people. And yet Judas's heart stance was clearly far from being in a good place. Here's the deal, you guys. I think that so often we assume that people are in a good place because they know how to talk church, right? Because they're showing up to a good place of worship, because they're, surrounded by some good friends. But ultimately, fruit speaks louder than what you are saying about yourself and your personal life. Amen. The problem with Judas was, even before his ultimate act where he betrayed Jesus and sent him to go die on the cross, his actions, his fruit was talking well ahead of time, even before that event would go down. That is the one that we remember Judas the most for, right? He was already in a place where he was stealing. He was already in a place where he was trying to use manipulation, where he was trying to rob people. And so it looks like from the outside, he was hanging around all the right people and doing all the right stuff. But in the end, his fruit spoke. Listen to me. Some of you guys have fallen into a place of deception with different people because it looks like everything on the outside should be the way that you would think a good person's would be. That person has been hanging out around the church crowd. They're attending the right things. They know the language. They've got XYZ going on. But in reality, if you aren't careful, you can fail to see people for who they really are when you don't do a fruit check on their life. Amen. Judas was hanging around all the right people, right? But his fruit was rotten. Amen. Even before the betrayal of Jesus, his fruit was rotten. He was already stealing. It shows you that something is not right in a person's life when the fruit is off. Amen. Listen to me. God is telling you guys in this season, it is very, very critical for you to test the fruit before you give your full trust, before you give full surrender to people in your personal life. They have to prove it a little bit, ladies and gents. Just because they're hanging around the right people, they know the lingo, they've got the background, they may even have a ministry degree, do XYZ, does not mean that you just give people full access into your life, especially if you have noticed some rotten fruit on their life. Amen. Because what looks like a little bit of rotten fruit in a Judas situation in your personal life will ultimately expose the big rotten fruit down the line, because people reap what they sow. Amen. And what is in darkness will eventually get exposed to the light. That's what the Bible tells us. And so I just want to encourage you guys to be careful today. Watch the fruit of the people's actions that you are hanging around in your life, and don't just trust people right off the bat. I'm not saying that, we've got to spend our lives in a bubble and never open up to anybody, but some of you guys, you need to watch people's actions before you grant them full access into your life. And the reason that you've struggled in past seasons is you never made them, quote unquote, pass the test. You know, you just assumed, oh, this person's in a good place. You know, I can give them the most vulnerable parts of my life just because they were hanging around the right types of people. No, ladies and gents, just because they're running in the same crowds as you, just because they're in that place does not necessarily mean that the fruit is right on their life or that they should even be entrusted with those deepest parts of your heart and with who you are. And so I want to encourage you guys today, do the fruit check. Amen. Judas sometimes isn't super apparent to us in our natural eyes, but the fruit will always speak. And if you watch the fruit, you will find out the truth behind who that person really is. Amen. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll chat with you again soon.